where they're at right now, and since I've been dealing with Pew before, Homer, is that they get nervous, especially with a large grant like a $300,000 grant. They get nervous if it's gonna take a lot of convincing to get this thing to happen to whoever's gonna host this archive. And I don't blame them for that either, so it's, I mean, when they're dealing with people like Don or Lovett or Helen saying, yeah, we want this, we're gonna be behind it, we're gonna put our enthusiasm and all this stuff into it. And then all at once you have somebody putting on the brakes. And right, still now, me and Jack don't know the inner workings of the board. I don't know anybody on the board, so I don't know what kind of personality conflicts are happening. I mean, I'm totally in the dark.
Right.
Well, I'm not on the board.
Steve's got another comment.
Well, hold on, Celeste wants to jump in.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, just from my own experience dealing with archives, and I worked for the American Philosophical Society for quite a while and got grants for them to do this kind of thing. I want to second what Homer was saying about the idea that first there's a project, but then there's the institution, right? Then there's the in perpetuity. And I'm just wondering, it would seem to me that knowing Pew, and especially Pew's emphasis or focus on project grants. I mean, these are project grants. They start, they end. But that there would have to be some kind of plan that had been made to say, these are the resources that we're looking at to help us, get the proper climate control, get the proper digital backup, get the proper, Diane, of course, would know all of this as well. That there's all kinds of those and I'm sorry if I'm repeating things that have been said before, since I'm new here. But just that it does seem to me that is part of the total equation, and it does sound as though that's part of what the board was saying.
Oh, absolutely, that was one of the concerns that, they were saying, well, what happens after the grant?
Yeah.
What's it gonna cost to run this program and all? And I'll just, to answer your question, so at the letter of intent stage, that's like a mini grant. You basically lay out what you intend to do and why it's important. When you get to the full application stage is where you address sustainability and long-term vision and all that.
Yeah.
So the letter of intent didn't really address any of that, but if and when we were to, go to the next stage, we would have to.
You would have had to.
And the board would definitely have to be involved in that,
Yeah.
Sort of.
That's why I raised at our first meeting back in September, I guess it was, I said, the ideal location would be a place where they'll already have staff that could add this to their duties, because otherwise you get into the question, who's gonna pay the staff after the grant ends, That was something we did discuss briefly.
Right.
I brought that up. Steve, what do you got?
Well, I'm doing my best to listen. I can pretty much hear everybody, so thank you. And I think the conversation is really good. I think everybody's sort of uncovering all the various angles. And I just wanted to sort of further that by saying that, it is an unfortunate situation, and if it goes completely south, a lot of people are going to look bad and sort of be hurt, and the community is going to be hurt. This project is going to be hurt. Pew is going to sort of look badly on the situation. So none of that is really good. There is a question about whether or not this is repairable, and whether, if it got repaired, if it would be a tense relationship or a good relationship. There's also the question about whoever just was speaking about the, trying to go, like Lewis said, about going to an institution where there's already a staff and an ongoing collection, because that would alleviate some of the fear about what happens later. Like if the stuff gets collected, if it's already in a library, like at Temple or Penn or Bloxon or some other existing place, that's not such a big worry. And it is a worry if it's at the Clef Club and there's just like the bottom falls out on the funding. On the other hand, I still think that it's good for us to address the issue, because I've had a lot of negotiations in my life, and the negotiations are, sometimes they're about money and sometimes they're about practical things, but very often they're about people's feelings of pride and dignity. And it seems that by catching the board off guard, as Jack described, they were just kind of pissed and like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? You guys can't just like sign the Clef Club up for something we don't know about. And so if we decided as a group that it's worth really trying to repair it, I still suggest that we kind of just offer a sincere apology, point out what the benefits are to both sides, how much they stand to gain from it, and ask if they can reconsider.
Yeah, I must admit, Steve, you were mentioning the personal side. I mean, I'm kind of hurt that Helen, I put in a tremendous amount of work on that letter of intent.
Oh, absolutely.
And Helen never called to explain, apologize, anything. I was just given this formal letter. And I feel like I'm owed somebody reaching out to me in some way. So I do feel personally kind of hurt.
Well, I think that she's probably tremendously embarrassed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, the climate there,
Yeah,
you
the
know,
hospital.
one, again, Don is not there anymore.
Helen is, yeah.
Don is not there anymore. So the climate there is, in flux to a certain extent. And, the board, which, Ken Scott has been there forever, as president of the board. And, I've been in some of the strategic planning meetings. And ultimately, one of the things that, they enlisted the help of the Fox School of Business to help them
Yeah, I
develop
knew
a
that,
strategic
yeah.
plan. And one of the goals ultimately is to totally rebuild the Clef Club, to do it over again. So, just the atmosphere, Helen may have been caught off guard, extremely caught off guard as well. And as you said, somewhat embarrassed. So, but I think, mending and exploring the possibility, maybe approaching the board and trying to find a way to see if there is a way to make this happen, might be one of the first things to do. And if it's not gonna happen,
But to approach the board, you have to go through either Ann or Helen.
well,
because
Ann is,
that will-
Ann is
One
key.
other
Okay,
person.
right, Ann is key.
Ann is key.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
There's one other person you might be able to get involved who has connections with the Clef Club. He's not in the city now, but I think he's still involved, Dr. Bernard Watson. And if you approach him, that might be an end.
Can I ask
Because
just
wasn't he
a
president
question?
when they got,
He was president of William Penn.
William Penn
wasn't
Foundation, when they
Yeah,
got
well,
the
yeah.
big grant?
He was the president of William Penn, and he was the one
Who got-
who instigated the creation of the
Right,
Clef Club.
right,
Oh, is that right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was basically his idea. And
Wow.
It was a huge project for him, and he was the one who pushed forward the whole project at the very beginning.
Oh,
Oh,
we
okay.
gotta get in touch with him.
Can I ask a question here? Is there pressure on the timeline? The reason I'm asking that is because the way that this letter from the board is phrased, and people have brought up the idea that it says that they're willing to revisit after they have strategic priorities that are met. And I kind of want to play advocate for the board, just devil's advocate in a sense, just for a second. I can definitely see a position of saying, we have worked hard to set up a plan in order to get the Clef Club back on its feet, or to redo the Clef Club, as J. Michael was saying. If they were allowed that, I mean, if they were allowed that the time to do that, and then were persuaded that this was something that was good for the profile of the Clef Club, that it was good for the archive to have that public-facing place, et cetera. I guess I'm just wondering what the pressures on the timeline are
See,
for the
I-
archive.
I'd like to step in here. See, the problem with if you're dealing with the Clef Club as sustainable, well-reputed organization from the get-go. They've had some kind of a checkered history as far as financing and that kind of stuff. And this stuff doesn't go unnoticed. I mean, it's, you know, they're not an institution who's in a vacuum. So it's something that, as far as, I'm not against revisiting it and contacting like Bernard Watson and these folks like that to try and talk to the board. I think that's good, and we can meet with them again and that kind of stuff, to try and rescue it. But at the same time, I don't know if we could keep this whole Jack on the project or me on the project. We're talking about, well, let's wait until the Clef Club gets itself together and then
I
we'll
see what
revisit it. I know I could be dead by then.
Yeah, we'll all be dead.
Yeah.
Let's be more positive. But